Pitchers and catchers have reported to Goodyear, which means it's time to lay out who is the best starting pitcher on the team. We'll talk about that on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Reds podcast. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. I'm Stephen Offenbaker. He's Jeff Carr, and we are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans who've been podcasting about this team for a combined 14 years. Long time. We love talking Cincinnati Reds baseball. We love talking Cincinnati Reds baseball with you. On today's show, pitchers and catchers have made it to Goodyear. We can confirm already. We know for a fact Matt McLain has a shoulder. Confirmed. Write it down. We're going to be talking about the pitchers and catchers today as they have reported out there. We'll rank the starting pitchers on today's show. We're also going to dive into some future bets over on FanDuel a little bit later on. And we're going to finish off the show with what you want to talk about. We're going to cover your questions and comments for as long as you guys want to talk, I guess. Jump into the comment section and we'll chat some Reds baseball with you to close out today's show, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets back if your first $5 bet wins. Just download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started today. All right, Jeff, where we're going to get started, pitchers and catchers have reported. This should be a holiday, right?
It should be.
The day after Super Bowl, pitchers and catchers report. Like, it should be a holiday, but they're there. They're in Goodyear. We can confirm they're showing up. Baseball's back, baby.
You know, early on in my relationship with my wife, Hannah, she always was like, hey, you know what happens this week, don't you? And I'm like, pitchers and catchers report, baby. She's like, no, I'm talking about Valentine's Day. And I'm like, I never talk about that. I'm talking about pitchers and catchers reporting. And I'm so happy that we are back, seeing all the pictures and the videos of the guys walking into the complex there in Goodyear. Of course, all the pitchers and catchers. We've seen Matt McLain walking in with some nice Kobe's. Actually, I had to ask my buddy, it's a sneakerhead. I wasn't sure what they were, but some nice looking shoes in his hand. He looks ready to go. I don't know if he's ready to hoop or if he's ready to play some ball, but whatever it is, he looks healthy. And we're excited to see all these guys getting back. But it had me thinking, Steve, because the Reds made a point this offseason to really go after the pitching depth, ensuring that Nick Martinez wasn't going anywhere, adding Brady Singer to the group, even bringing in a guy who is going to add to the pitching depth to this organization in the second half of the season in Wade Miley. I feel really good about where we are, but how do they all stack up? We've been talking about the fact that the Reds have been adding all this talent. How do we rank these guys? And I wanted to start it off today's show with that because I think the top guy is pretty obvious, but I want to ask you this. I mean, I think most people would agree Hunter Greene is the ace of this staff, but is he the unquestioned, unassailable ace of the scene? Can anybody knock him off that perch?
Yeah. A healthy Nick Lodolo could challenge for that. I think that's probably the only guy right now. There may be some guys coming through the system that aren't here yet that could knock him off that pedestal in a season or two. This season, though, I think he's pretty safe. Nick Lodolo is going to need to prove that he's healthy and build on his innings and do all the things that we've been saying that he needs to do. So for this year, Hunter Greene is the dude. He is the ace. He is starting pitcher number one. Where it gets a little bit more difficult is when you want to talk about who is starting pitcher number two, because there are a couple guys that could challenge for this title if we're talking about this season, not talking about potential. I think Andrew Abbott would like to have a word talking about who's the number two guy on this staff right now. Is it Nick Lodolo? Is it Andrew Abbott? With the contract that he got and with the expectation that comes along with that contract, Nick Martinez would want to be in that conversation as well, I think. So I'd be interested from you, who would you go as the number two guy in this rotation?
I'll be honest, I've waffled a little bit, and this is something that we actually got a question on late in the live show, I think a couple of weeks ago. And so I really wanted to kind of flesh this out a little bit more and discuss it a little bit more. I even wrote about it over at CincinnatiRedStock.com. But I think it's Nick Lodolo. And I think I'm buying into the reports that we've heard from our folks that are closer to the organization that we are, that the blister issue, that quite frankly, just lasted far too long last year. It was something that was like, my God, why won't this go away? We found out why. It's because it was in the worst spot for a pitcher to have a blister, but it was in the most fluky spot, the kind of spot that if you actually rested it, if you stopped trying to throw a pitch, you would be able to heal it. So that's what Nick Lodolo has been doing this offseason. He's gotten it healed. He's ready to go. He's 100%. We're not worried about it. So I think with that, I put him as my number 2 guy. I think his ceiling is the highest of the current group. I think it's higher than Martinez. It's higher than Andrew Abbott because we saw it last year. Last year was a tale of like 2 Nick Lodolos, right? Lodolo 1 right before June was just going off. And in fact, up to June 23rd, I had it marked in the article. He had an ERA under 3, and he was pushing Hunter Green for, and I know that you were making the argument for being the ace of the staff last year. Then he got the blister on June 23rd, and everything just went crazy bad for him the rest of the season. From June 23rd on, he made, 11 starts? I have this pulled up. I should have, memorized it. But, yeah, he had it was 10 starts from June 23rd on, and he had a 7.38 ERA. But on top of that, opposing hitters had a 458 slugging percentage against him. He was getting killed. He was walking more guys. Everything was going bad for him. I think that part of Nick Lodolo is gone, and we will see a much more first half version of Nick Lodolo this season.
How do you respond when you hear things like this from Ben in the comment section? He says, I don't trust Lodolo to stay healthy. Beyond the blisters, he's had a calf, a back, and a shoulder issue during his time in the major leagues. And I think that's a fair observation. Now, I don't know that I'm quite ready to just say, he's injury prone. This is the way it's going to be. You're going to get, what did we get from him last season total? We got 21 starts. Is that going to be the range that he's in for his entire career? I'm not ready to go there yet, but I definitely think this is a prove it year though, Jeff. I think this is a year that the Reds really need for Nick Lodolo to prove that he can match the hype that has surrounded him, to prove that he can start moving towards the ceiling that's been accredited to him, right? He's going to have to be consistent, and he's going to have to stay healthy, at least for the most part. I don't think, the days of a guy going, all 32 starts, never being injured or never missing a turn, those days are mostly over. It'll occasionally happen, but that's not a thing that a lot of these pitchers are going to do. He's going to miss a turn or two. But I need him to be healthy and being able to contribute all through the season and be available for what we hope is a postseason.
I do see Ben's point. I would think, and I'm not there yet either. I'm with you. I don't believe that he's injury prone yet, but the injuries in his past have concerned me. I think for him to kind of shake that feeling off from the fan base, he's got to make at least 25 starts this year. And I think I need to see 150 innings from him. And I think if he does that, we're seeing a guy that's not dealing with what he has dealt with in the past. He's not dealing with the lingering injuries. He's dealing with stuff that, like you said, maintenance-wise, maybe he misses 1 or 2 turns, but then he's back and he's going. There was just such a huge cliff of a drop-off for him last year that's why I was so worried. And honestly, early on this offseason, I was almost to the point of, what? If the White Sox want Nick Lodolo for Luis Robert, I'm interested. But I think I'm kind of back to the point. I've worked myself back up to saying I'm excited to see him pitch in Great American Ballpark this year. And I think it's because of his ceiling. I put him number 2 here because number 3 for me is Andrew Abbott. And I think that his talent is very solid. I wouldn't say he's got ace potential, but I think he is going to be a middle of the rotation type of dude for his entire career. He's not a huge strikeout guy, but he does well to limit the hard contact. He does well to limit the power that he can see from opposing lineups. And I think that's where his strength is, and being pitch efficient. That's going to keep him healthy for his career. I think he can approach 30 starts. I don't know if he gets to 30. Maybe he gets to 28, 29. But he has really ratcheted up his workload each of the last 3 years. So I am sort of keeping one eye on his health status. I want to see exactly how he responds this year, but I have a lot of hope for him to be a solid middle of the order option for the Reds for a long time.
So here's where I'm going to differ with you a little bit, because I think career potential wise, if we're talking that, then I would go Andrew Abbott next. But I think in looking just at the 2025 season, looking at how we're ranking this rotation as it is right now, I'm going Brady Singer as number 3 here. Last season, he threw 180 innings. He made 32 starts. He had 8.5 strikeouts per 9, 2.7 walks per 9. He was really good in Kansas City. So I think that translates into another good year. I think even playing at Great American Ballpark, his numbers are going to hold. I think he's the number 3 guy. I really liked this addition to the team that Nick Krall made by bringing in Singer. I know it cost India, and that, upset a lot of fans, especially the guys that really loved India, but I like this deal for the Reds. I think Singer is going to be a stabilizing veteran type guy. And, he's only 27, but, he's got a few years under his belt. So I think he's going to be a stabilizer in the group of pitchers. He's going to be a stabilizer in this rotation, a guy that has consistently gone out and just takes his turn and does his thing. The Reds have kind of lacked that guy in the rotation. And I like the impact that Singer is going to have in that regard. So for me, Singer's my number 3 guy.
It's interesting that you put him there because I think that means we disagree on the rest of the power rankings for this rotation. We'll get into what that is, and we'll look at why FanDuel doesn't have a lot of faith in Terry Francona coming up next. Now the football season's over. We're officially into MLB futures season. Did you think I was going to say basketball season? No. Now that the boys are back in good year, we've got lots of great futures to check out. And all this week, we're going to be talking about those today. Of course, we've been talking about the over-under on total Reds wins for a couple of weeks. It's still at 78.5. The over-under at 78.5. I think that number's going to go up very soon. The odds on the over are -124, which tells me that we may see it bump up to 79.5, maybe even 80.5. So the best value is right now. Go to FanDuel.com and put a couple of bucks on the Reds to go over 78.5 wins. I'm telling you, I've done it. You should do it too. Plus, new users can bet $5, and if you win your first $5 bet, you can get $150 in bonus bets back. You can bet on the NBA, college basketball, NHL, but of course, all the MLB futures are out there. Check it out at FanDuel.com. FanDuel is an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. We are talking Reds today here all day, every week, every month, all year long. Make sure you become an everydayer and subscribe to the podcast here on YouTube or on your favorite audio platform. We're going to be with you all leading up to opening day and all the way through the season too. All right, Steve, we have started our rankings. We've gotten to 3. I've got Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Andrew Abbott. You've got Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Brady Singer. My 4th guy is Nick Martinez. And that's why we differ so much on this, because you said Brady Singer 3. I said Brady Singer 5. And I'll tell you why on that just in a moment. But Nick Martinez, for me, I think really showed his potential as a starting pitcher last season. And it was interesting, if you remember right, and I know that we talked about this in May at some point, because he made a couple of starts at the beginning of the year. And I'm pretty sure, I think it was you, I don't think it was me, but I think it was you that said, I don't want to see him start another game. I don't like it. I don't, whatever he does when he's a starter, he's much worse than when he's a relief pitcher. And then the necessity dictated that he would become a starting pitcher in August, and he went crazy. Had a 2-something ERA. He didn't walk anybody hardly at all. I think it was like 1 walk per start, if that. And then you look at the fact that he was so good at keeping the ball on the ground, so good at limiting the hard contact, that there's plenty of people that say, well, the qualifying offer is an overpay for Nick Martinez. But I say this rotation would have been a big question mark without him.
I'm not going to get really worked up about having Nick Martinez in this slot. For me, it's Andrew Abbott in this slot, right? So you put him at 3. Yeah. I went with Singer. I'm putting Andrew Abbott at 4 because I think he's due to continue to break out. 25 starts last season, 138 innings pitched, a 3.72 ERA. The strikeouts per 9 aren't quite there, but I think they will improve. The walks per 9 weren't quite there. I think they will improve as Andrew Abbott continues to develop. And I think that's what gives me the nudge of putting him here, because As you say, August rolled around last year, and Nick Martinez suddenly became the second coming of Greg Maddux. I mean, he was amazing. He was really, really, really good. I think that was his ceiling. I think that it is not necessarily a given that he will pitch that way again. But I do think because of what they're paying him, and he's on a qualifying offer, I think they'll slot him in. I'm putting him as the 5th starter in this rotation right now. You run him out there every 5 days. If he's that guy again, great. It helps the Reds drive towards a postseason. If he's a decent starting pitcher and you've got options that come up through Louisville, he becomes a trade piece towards the All-Star break. There are a lot of reasons that you just put Nick Martinez in this rotation and you let him pitch every 5th day and see what he does. And that's what I think the Reds will do. But I think he'll be a back of the rotation kind of guy. I think that he'll be good, but he won't be, lights out like he was there in August. But he could be very useful to this team. So, that rounds out my 5, Jeff. I go Green, Lodolo, Singer, Abbott, Martinez as my 5 pitchers.
And the reason that I have Brady Singer where I have him doesn't mean that I think that it was a bad trade. I liked the trade of Jonathan India for Brady Singer because this means that Rhett Lauder now becomes a commodity and not a necessity. And I think that they can allow him to continue to develop and be ready rather than kind of forcing him to be ready to go at the beginning of the season. But I also think that Brady Singer is not necessarily somebody we can expect amazing performances from. I kind of look at him to be a Bronson Arroyo type pitcher. And Bronson Arroyo was a very solid pitcher for the Reds for his career here. I mean, in 279 starts, he had a 4.18 ERA. That's pretty solid. That's not anything that's going to be pushing for best pitcher ever to pitch for the Reds, but that's a guy that you can trust. And Brady Singer is a guy that we can trust. But I worry about his fly ball potential. Dude gives up a lot of fly balls. And that was okay in Kauffman Stadium, where they had a very cavernous outfield. That's not okay in Great American Ballpark. So how does Derek Johnson mitigate that? Because he can't just be coming into camp thinking, all right, Brady Singer's just going to come here and do his thing and he's going to be fine. He's going to probably need to make some tweaks to his game a little bit, maybe not force him, but maybe like kind of push him in the direction of throwing more breaking balls low in the zone to induce ground balls and less fly ball outs, relying on that, because that was kind of his bread and butter for last season. And that is the reason that I've seen some people say that they hate the trade for the Reds and that they thought that the Reds made a bad decision to acquire Brady Singer. I'm not there, but I'm also not of the mindset that I think that Brady Singer is one of the better pitchers in this rotation.
Let's just very quickly do an honorable mention because they're talking about Rhett Lauder in the chat. You mentioned him. There's some other guys, right? The Chases, Burns and Petty, that are going to factor in at some point along the way. I think that right now, Rhett Lauder is your number 6 first guy up, ready on a moment's notice phone call guy. That's going to be Rhett Lauder. It'll be interesting to see how Burns and Petty do here in spring training and then early in the season. I think those are the 2 guys that are going to be dueling for, number 7, I guess, being the second starting pitcher up. And then any of those guys, once they get to the big league, well, then the ball's in their hands figuratively and literally because they'll be pitching to try and stay. So that's kind of how I rank them. I rank Burns and Petty as a toss up. I think Petty might have the inside track as the number 7 starter, but Rhett Lauder is firmly the first guy up if anything goes sideways.
I would agree with that. I find it interesting to see how much he will pitch before Wade Miley comes off the injured list. And does he stick when Wade Miley is healthy? Because Wade Miley, that was one guy, like whenever they were showing the guys coming into camp, Wade Miley looks trim, and he looks skinny. He looks like he's ready to go, ready to play some ball. He's still rehabbing from a Tommy John surgery, so he's not going to be ready probably, I would say, June. We're hearing like May, but I'm going to push that back just a little bit. I think it's probably going to be June before we see him. But I also think that Rhett Lauder has a lot of talent. The interesting part for me is I think 2025, he's obviously ahead of Chase Burns. I think overall, Chase Burns might be the better pitcher than Rhett Lauder will be. And I think that that's just a really good problem for the Reds to have, but we're not going to see that play out this season. That's going to be more of a 2026, 2027 type conversation, but I'm mentally preparing myself for that. But I'm with you. I think Rhett Lauder, number 6, easy.
And I do want to get to this FanDuel stuff real quick, Jeff, but just as a closing thought on the starting pitchers, our buddy Carrick thinks Ashcraft's 7th in line to start. I think you and I are both operating from the assumption that Graham Ashcraft's going to be in the bullpen. I think he's going to be in the bullpen. You think he's going to be in the bullpen. Until such time that the Reds announce he's going to be a starter when the season starts, I'll rethink my thought process here, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think when we reach opening day, Graham Ashcraft is a 7th inning guy, 8th inning guy in the Reds bullpen.
There are takes that we craft based on what we see, and then there are takes that we relay based on what reporters have said. Both of those things are pointing us to believe that Graham Ashcraft's going to be in the bullpen. Not only what we see, but what reporters are saying as well. And it's not that they have come out and said that Derek Johnson has put Graham Ashcraft in the bullpen. That's not happening. He's not made that decision yet. He shouldn't make that decision yet. They should wait for camp. But I'm telling you, that's where it's going to end up. And he's going to be in the bullpen, and that's what Graham Ashcraft's going to do. Let's jump into the futures for just a moment. Obviously, I've mentioned and we've talked about the total wins over under at 78.5. I think that's a smash hit for the over, and I've got 2 other futures bets that I think are smash hits to go on the overs right now. You need to jump on them right now because they're probably going to change as spring training goes along. But it's the win total, it's the stolen bases over under for Elly De La Cruz. They have it at 53.5 right now.
Oh, take the over.
I don't know. Look. If it was 62 and a half
they're
or
listening,
something like that, I would be interested.
They're listening to Terry Francona. They're taking what Terry's saying. He's not going to rein him in that much. He's going to get. He's still going to have him run just as much, but in smarter situations. Exactly. Elly's going to get his steals. That's almost
more than last year.
That's almost a gimme. You take the over on that stolen base.
I put $20 on that. I'm not going to lie. And then the other slam dunk over that I think you should take is, will Hunter Green have more than 200 strikeouts? The odds on that right now are plus 255. He almost had 200 last year, and he wasn't healthy enough to finish the season. And I think that he stays healthy this year. I think he smashes 200. He might be 210, 215 before it's all said and done. So my 3 smash hit overs are Reds win total, Elly De La Cruz stolen bases, and Hunter Green over 200 strikeouts. His over-under, by the way, just if you don't want to go over 200, Hunter Green's over-under on strikeouts, I believe, is 160.5. That's a smash hit over.
I would take that. The total makes me a little nervous, Jeff, just in that he started 26 games and had 169 strikeouts. Are they going to push him out to 30 starts? I don't know. But the over-under, that's a much better number. I would take the over all day long on the over-under, given that he struck out 169 guys in 26 starts last year.
So that's kind of what I'm looking at a little bit. I do, as the week goes along, I kind of want to get into some of the more speculative things and why I think the Reds do have a shot at a couple of awards. But I do want to get into the comment section because, look, I know we all got questions. It's spring training time, baby. What's the big question heading into camp? I want you to tell me. Coming up next.
If you can't follow us here live, if you can't be on YouTube, guess what? We can go on the road with you. We are available on every single podcast platform pretty much that there is out there. And if we're not on one you want us to be, send Jeff a message. He knows about that stuff. He'll make it happen. All right. This is my favorite part of the show, Jeff. We're going to get into the questions and the comments. Guys, I know we had some technical difficulties. That's on me. Sorry for the late start. You guys have been really going through a conversation in this chat today. Put your questions in again. We're going to start over. If you got something you want us to talk about, get it in there. We will start over with the chat section. I'm going to go to this, Scott Campbell, because this is what's on everybody's mind today. The big question going into camp is who wins the basketball contest during spring training? Who is the free throw champion of the 2025 Cincinnati Reds? What do you got, Jeff?
Haven't seen the sneakers. Look, it's all about the shoes. And Matt McClain had some pretty awesome looking shoes. I'm going to tell you, I think I'm picking him.
I'm taking Ellie De La Cruz. That guy can stand at the free throw line and drop the ball into the hoop. He's
I was going to
giant.
say, this is free throw content. I feel better about a free throw between Matt McClain and Ellie. If it's 21, I'm taking Ellie because Matt's
and then
not
they
gonna
had
be able to shoot over him.
They did have a 3-point contest at one point in time. I think that's Matt McClain. He looks like a little John Stockton out there. Just
easy money.
For those of a certain age, John Stockton was a basketball player. And he was very short.
John Stockton.
I'm just saying.
You calling me old now too. You gotta watch
that. Let's get into this. Let's see what kind of questions do we got going on here. Let's stick with this, Carrick. All right, I'll double down with you. Carrick says this is in regards to Graham Ashcraft. There's a reason he's coming into the season preparing to be a starter. Yeah, because he wants to be a starter. That's what he wants to be. But that's not going to be. That's where the money is. That's not going to be his best use for this team this year. And quite frankly, I don't think he's going to beat any of those other guys out. If you're having, I don't see it. I'm hearing too much, both from the guys on the beat all the time and from people in the building, that there is an open-mindedness of everybody involved, including Graham, probably. He's not going to say it out loud because he wants to compete for a starting spot. He's going to end up in this bullpen. I'll be stunned. I call it 90% chance he's in the back of this bullpen, 7th, 8th inning guy to start the season. I think that's a realistic number.
And to Carrick's point as well, Graham Ashcraft's not the only one doing that. Connor Phillips is coming in and acting as if he's going to be starting. He's going to remain stretched out to be a starter. And so is Carson Spires. But I don't think either one of those guys ends up in the rotation. I think there's a chance that Connor Phillips probably starts the year in the AAA rotation. And then if they call him up, they probably put him in the major league bullpen. I don't think that's the scenario for Graham Ashcraft. I don't believe that Nick Krall is going to sit down and look at this roster and say, we are better off having Graham Ashcraft stretched out to be a starter pitching every 5th day in Louisville, where he could be pitching in this bullpen whenever we need him to. I think that's ultimately going to be the decision that they make.
This from Chris. And I'm going to try and translate a little bit of this, a couple typos, but Chris says the over-under on CES, 25 home runs if healthy. That's the first part of this question. He says Ellie with 50. I think he's talking about stolen bases, which we just kind of covered there. But CES, over-under 25 home runs. I think that's actually a pretty good benchmark.
Yeah.
Coming off of injury, I'm going to take the under, but barely. I'm going to call him 22 to 24 home run range. I don't think he'll quite get to 25.
I do appreciate, and I'd like to give FanDuel a shout out here, because I appreciate them for only having Ellie De La Cruz on there for over-under homers, because if they had Matt McClain and CES, I'd probably be looking at those as well. But I think they're leaving them off because there's so many speculative things that surround guys like that. The problem with CES is he going to get enough playing time to get 25 home runs? I think he's going to be effective in the playing time that he gets. But does he earn everyday playing time at first base with Spencer Steer and Jeimer Candelario pushing for first base? Does CES earn everyday playing time at third base? Like, where does he get most of his playing time? Is it at DH? Things like this. Like, I don't know if he gets enough playing time to get to 25. I think he gets to 20. 25 might be that, like, if he takes hold of the starting spot early on in the season, I think he's got a shot to hit 25. I appreciate him for not saying 30, because I would say definitely under 30, but he has the potential to be a 30 homer guy even as soon as next year. I think we said that last year, but I definitely believe that this year is going to be one of those buffer years where he has to prove that he is an everyday player. It's just how quickly does he prove that leads to his season total. I like the 25 number though. That was a smart.
That's spot on. That's spot on to set it. I'm going to stick with the under and hope that I'm wrong. I hope that he hits the over, but
you say 24, I'd say 26. That's
being realistic. He's going to be right in that range. So that's a great question. Yeah. Just real quick, we didn't touch on Brandon Williamson at all. Just to remind everybody, he's not going to pitch this year. Tommy John surgery. He will be back in 2026.
And I think that's why they made the moves that they made. I think if Brandon Williamson and if Julian Aguiar were healthy, I don't know that they trade for Brady Singer. And they might have still kept Nick Martinez in some way, shape, or form. but I don't know that it would have been through the qualifying offer either. I think they saw the injuries late in the season because both those guys got Tommy John in the second half of the season, which means they're not only missing this year, they're probably missing a lot of 2026 as well. So the Reds definitely needed a couple of guys there. But yeah, neither Brandon Williamson nor Julian Aguiar are part of the ranking because they're not going to be part of the team this year.
Let's talk about Rhys Hines. Let's move to the outfield for just a second. John Hoffman says Rhys Hines spring training MVP 2025. Ben says Rhys Hines is made to shine in spring training. Lots of starters throwing mostly fastballs to get their arms stretched out. And then Carey follows it up with, do we think Rhys Hines comes up to stay? If so, when? Here's my thoughts on Rhys Hines. He's very interesting, and I think he has an outside chance to maybe play his way into the last outfield spot on the roster to start things off. I think what's much more realistic is that he starts out in Goodyear and is the spare part for a platoon with if Stuart Fairchild either can't go because of the thumb or gets injured. I think that platoon to start the season will be Fairchild, but Rhys Hines is probably going to be the first outfielder up, just given the depth situation at that position within the organization. Does he come up and stay? Well, it depends on what he does. He has to prove that he can consistently hit the breaking stuff, consistently prove that he can drive it the other way. I'm sold on his defense. I'm sold on his arm out there. I just need to know that he can be consistent at the plate. I don't need him to be the number 4 hitter, middle of the lineup guy, although that would be nice. But if he could be a 6 or 7 hitter with some pop and be fairly consistent, I could see him staying up.
I wonder, and I've thought about this a lot this offseason. I've mentioned that I kind of felt like the Reds didn't go after the cleanup hitter guy because they feel like they have one in CES. Do you think Rhys Hines was part of that thought process too? They're like, you know what? We don't need to stoop for power because we have it.
Might have been it. Well, that's I think short-sighted, but that might be what they were telling themselves. That might be what they were telling themselves.
Nobody's ever mistaken the Reds for a team that isn't short-sighted.
This is true. I don't know. I think if Rhys Hines does anything in 2025, we'll just file that under the pleasant surprise category. I'm not really counting on him to do anything. And then if he does something, I'll be really happy about it.
To answer Carey specifically, I don't know that he gets called up to stay in 2025 because I think that there is an element of this team that they want Stuart Fairchild at some point and that they want Rhys Hines at some point. I think we'll kind of see a bit of a shuffle between those two guys. And I think that how early he gets called up is based on Stuart Fairchild's health.
This from our buddy Dave Pemberton. What's happening, Dave? Who do each of us have penciled in at third base? Because it seems like the position is wide open. This one's fun because there's what they should do, what they think they should do, and what they'll really do. There's a lot of answers to this question. I think the best defensive lineup that may or may not happen, I hope it does, but the best defensive alignment for this team is to slide Ellie over to third base, put Matt McClain at short, Gavin Lux at second, CES at first, splitting time with Jeimer Candelario. That's the best infield defensive alignment in my mind. Is that going to happen? I don't know. Francona still hasn't really backed off much of Ellie's our shortstop. So we'll have to wait and see. If they don't move Ellie De La Cruz, if Ellie is going to just stay at shortstop, then third base does get really interesting. I need for Jeimer Candelario to start their opening day so that Jeff has to get me my bottle of Pappy's. But beyond that,
bottle of Pappy.
Beyond that, it's Pappy's. It's a winner's pick. Remember, we're gonna have a competition. It's not going to be Noelvi Marte. I think it's easier to say who it's not going to be. Noelvi Marte will not be the starting third baseman on this team. He'll be in AAA. Santiago Espinal will not be the starting third baseman on this team. He may spot start and be a defensive sub and do things. You'll see him there from time to time, but he's not going to be the everyday starter at third base. And if that's the case, if it's not those two guys, then it's going to be Jeimer Candelario. It's going to be maybe Matt McClain moving out of position. If you're not going to move Ellie, then maybe you have to move Matt around a little bit. Or the outfield situation works out such that you can bring in Spencer Steer, and Spencer Steer can play third base. And if it's not going to be Ellie and you can figure out a way to have a decent outfield and bring in Spencer Steer and have him at third base, that's, I think, the second best defensive alignment on the infield. If you go Steer, De La Cruz, McLean, CES, Candelario with Lux as the super utility somewhere out there. There's a lot of possibilities here, Jeff.
I almost wonder, at least from an opening day standpoint, it's probably I think I would expect the Giants to start Logan Webb on opening day, which means it'll be a right-handed pitcher. Kind of wonder if Gavin Lux isn't your opening day third baseman, because I think they'll start TJ Friedel in center field, which will like pretty much guarantee that Matt McLean starts on the infield. And I don't necessarily know if, given the choice, the Reds would put McLean at third over Gavin Lux. And so I think Gavin Lux probably starts the year at third base on opening day. There's a chance. I think it's between Gavin Lux and Spencer Steer. I don't buy into it. I've seen the article from Gordon Whitmire. I don't buy into the Reds playing Jeimer Candelario that much at third base. I just don't see it. I think that if he is showing them anything in the field, they are going to say, okay, you're good to play first base then. You can be our first base / DH guy. I don't see, I think he doesn't, I don't see double-digit games for Jeimer Candelario at third base this year. I think
that's kind of your first little hot take of the year. There we go.
Yeah. I think it's Lux and Steer at third base. Even though Lux doesn't have a lot of career experience at third base, I think especially against a right-handed pitcher, they're going to try to figure out how to get Friedel, McLean, and Lux all in the lineup at the same time. And I think the best way to do that is that way.
Dallas Hall says they get to go to spring training this year. What are some things that should check out? Don't get stuck at just being at the Goodyear complex. Reds and Guardians share the spring training site in Goodyear Ballpark. Great venue, fun place to watch a game. But also there are some really amazing spring training complexes in the Phoenix area. Do not be afraid to go around and hit them all. The last time I was out there, and I'm a baseball fanatic, but I was going to 2 games a day. I would find a 12 o'clock start somewhere and drive to that. That game would end. I would have some time to regroup and then head to the next baseball complex and watch another one. I forget. I think it's the Rockies use Salt River, and maybe the Diamondbacks share that. It's amazing. It's a mini baseball wonderland. It's a beautiful ballpark. It's great. Just make sure you get around and see other areas. Don't just get stuck because the Goodyear Ballpark is next to an airport boneyard. And that's kind of all that's there. That's it. So get out and see things. Hike Camelback Mountain. It's straight up, but it's only like 2 miles. You can do it. Get there. It's worth it to see the view of Phoenix. Those are the things I've done out there. I jam pack as much baseball in as possible, and they have some great breweries as a side note.
That's kind of the one thing about my baseball fandom that has been missing. I have never been to spring training, and I won't be this year. It'll probably be next year that I get to finally do that, but looking forward to finally doing that.
All right, let's see here. Scott Campbell, the over under at 0.5 home runs of Ellie hitting one out of the ballpark this year. He's come so close to doing that thing, right? Like
he hit one last year, didn't he? It was like
he hit the riverboat. He hit the river deck, but it didn't get to the river. He hit a home run when he was in AA that went an estimated 600 feet. Yeah. I took that trajectory using Google Maps. He would have to hit the ball, I think, 608 feet down the right field line for the ball to land splash, to not bounce, to land in the river. If ever there was a guy that was going to do that, it's Ellie De La Cruz. I'm going to take the under because if we were betting real money, Scott, but if there's a guy on this team that can do that, it's him. Reese Hines hits for a lot of power also, but I think the fact that he hits, towards that upper deck in left field make it harder. Mm-hmm. But Ellie could do it.
I'd say over. I think he'll do.
You think he's going to do it? He's going to put one in the river.
I think he'll do it this year. Not in the river. He said out of the park. Okay, I think he could hit it out of the park. Like river. I think even Adam Dunn hit the river on a bounce.
A bounce.
Yeah. So to
All right, I think
splash,
Ellie's going to do
slam
it, man.
dunk it. I mean, he could do it. As far as just hitting it out of the ballpark, though, I think he can hit one out. I think he hits 2 out this year.
How do you feel about this? If CES doesn't win the first baseman's job, if he's the number 2 guy to Candelario, then he should be in AAA. What do you think about that?
To get the everyday playing time.
Yeah.
I could see that, but then who are you replacing him with? Because the Reds don't have a ton of depth on the infield when it comes to like looking down at AAA and stuff like that. Because if he's not up here, then I think Noelvi Marte is. So I think that he still has rotational
I don't
value.
see any scenario where Noelvi Marte is on the big league club to start the season.
Right. So, but I mean, that's saying like if CES starts the year in AAA and Noelvi Marte starts the year in AAA, then they're going for Mr. Outside Hire on the bench. I don't
waiver
know
wire claim.
Yeah, I don't know that there's anybody like they're hoping for a cut at that point. I think CES kind of has an easy path to an opening day roster appointment. It's opening day starting appointment that is the difficulty for him.
Yeah,
but
I
think as long as he's
pretty
healthy,
much
he's
all
on
in
the major
on
roster.
if he's. That's just what I was going to say. If he's healthy, he's on the big league club.
He has that
That's
right
just-
wrist. Yeah.
It's just the way it's going to do. He's got his Luke Skywalker hand. He's going to be ready to go. Will Austin Hayes be a starter in the outfield? Yes, he will be a starter. I think he's going to be everyday player. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. At least at the beginning of the season, I think the Reds are rolling into this year thinking that they are getting the 2023 version of Austin Hayes, and they're not going to platoon him at least for the first little bit. Now, if he proves them wrong and he really just can't do anything against right-handed pitching, then maybe they revisit that. But I expect him to be the everyday left fielder.
Aaron asks, is TJ Antone still on this team? You should follow him on Instagram. He is rehabbing his butt off. He is coming off his 1, 2, 3rd Tommy John surgery and trying to work his way back. We won't see him this year. He's not going to pitch in 2025, I don't think. I hope he makes it back in 2026. But, I mean, at some point, man, what a bunch of bad luck for a really, really great guy. I hope that
it's an inspirational story to follow. The fact that he is still working his butt off to come back after 3 Tommy John surgeries. But yeah, I don't think it'll be this year. It'll probably be second half of 2026 that we see him attempt to make his comeback.
Do you know the answer? Aaron's asking all of the is so-and-so still around? Is Connor Overton still around?
If he is, he's not on the 40 man.
Is he like on a minor deal with this team or something? I can't remember. At some point he was like going to be let go, or
I know he was DFA'd at some point last year. I want to say back in August, but yeah, it says that 2025
granted
contract
free
status
agent,
not updated.
Wait, November 4th, 2024, granted free agency.
So
And I did not see. So on last November, they cut him loose. And thus far, he has not re-signed with anybody, according to Baseball Reference.
Probably be a spring training ad because you need all the arms you can get to get through the first couple of games.
Being that pitchers and catchers reported today, Jeff, let's do one of these. Extremely early, ridiculous hot take from Scott Campbell. The 2025 Reds will reach the NLCS. That's a hot take. I don't want to predict what round they're going to make the playoffs. I'm ready right now to say that they're gonna make the playoffs out of the National League Central.
So I find it hard to believe that anybody's going to be the 1 seed outside of the Dodgers. So then the Reds would have to be the 2 seed, right? Yeah, they would have to be the 2 seed to not play the Dodgers in the divisional round. Because if they're the 3 seed and they win, they would still, and the 2 seed wins, like there would have to be a lot that would have to happen for them to not face that, not face the Dodgers in the divisional round. So that would be very hot takey because they'd have to beat LA in the divisional round. But boy, that'd be a lot of fun to watch.
Ben thinks that Candelario should be the full-time DH in the hopes of maximizing the value of his bat. I think I would be fine with that. But a lot of it depends on CS's wrist, right? And can he just go out there and play 150 games at first base cool. I suppose you could use Spencer Steer and do some scooter rounds because guys are going to shift around. So you can make that happen. I'm fine with Candelario getting some starts at first base. I mean, that's perfectly fine. Is he going to give you a gold glove over there? No, but I think he can be serviceable when CES needs a break or when CES just needs to be the DH that day and not play the field also.
Because he broke a toe at one point and he broke a thumb at another point. I want to say that both were like hit by pitch things. They weren't in the field things though. So I don't necessarily know that one equals the other. Like you take him out of the field and you really lower his injury risk. Obviously, you're not going to get rid of it. Everybody has a chance to get hurt, but I don't necessarily know that it's playing in the field that is causing him the most injury risk. I think ultimately he does a decent amount of first base defending. Got too many H's in there. But yeah, I don't think that there's not going to be an everyday DH on this team. I think that the likelihood that we see a guy play more than 75 games at DH, I think is pretty much 0%. I think the most anybody plays at DH is like 60 games. And I still think that seems kind of high.
This from Josh, wondering if we have any information yet on the direct-to-consumer package to watch the Reds streaming on FanDuel. I'm seeing some conflicting stuff that you still are going to have a cable provider for this year.
I saw a post from Altifiber about that, but I think that was just for Altifiber subscribers.
Was it? Because they have not announced the package or the pricing or any of that stuff yet. I imagine we'll get that here once the spring training games get underway. I'm sure there will be some kind of an announcement to what that's going to cost. For the out of market guys, FanDuel Sports app is probably not going to be your go-to to get Reds coverage. If you're out of market, MLB TV is still going to be your go-to. But they have not announced it yet, Josh. So we're waiting to hear what it is they're going to do. All as we know is that most of the broadcasting crew will remain the same. There will be changes to the pre and the post game, and rumor has it that some roles are changing. Some guys are going to be asked to do some different things than what they did last year. So we will see how that plays out once they make the official announcement.
From a purely personal opinion standpoint, I was kind of bummed to see that we weren't going to be able to use MLB TV in market, because I love the ability to switch between television broadcasts and radio broadcasts, and you can hear the opponent broadcast and all this other, like, I like the ability to move around and like hear different points of view during the same game, because I think that baseball lends itself to being just as good to listen to the radio broadcast as it is to listening to the television broadcast. And I love being able to kind of switch between those throughout a game. I know that I'm in the minority in that, and there's probably not a whole lot of people that ever really think about that, but that's where I'm kind of bummed that we're going to end up without, as far as in-market consumers go, not being able to use MLB TV.
Let's see here. There's some talk. Let's get into this again. We talked about this maybe a week or so ago, but Adrian Sing's confused on how the Cubs are the team to beat in the Central. I think here's where we're at. The Brewers didn't get any better. They probably are a little bit worse, and they're due for a fall off. They did it with smoke and mirrors and devil magic last year. There's going to be a fall back to the division. The question is going to be, can the Reds finally break through against them? The Cardinals are absolute hot garbage, and I, for the life of me, can't figure out why people are picking them where they're picking them.
To do anything.
You can quote me. Yeah. Jeff, please clip that and tag Locked On Cardinals in it for me. I would love to, let them know what I think about them. But the Cubs, they had the splash move, right? They made the trade with the Astros. They had like the one true press conference addition to the team this year, and then immediately took the dude to arbitration, which is a head scratcher to me. But
right.
So I think that's why there's this impression, the Cubs, they're not messing around. Well, they got better. I think you said marginally better when we talked about this last time.
Yeah.
I do. Listen, the Cubs will be in the mix. Are they the team to beat? No, but they're better. They'll compete. They won 83 games last year. I don't have the records in front of me right now, but I think 83 games. They weren't really that much better than the Reds, a few games better than the Reds. So they'll be in the thick of it. The Reds are going to be in the thick of it. The Cubs are going to be in the thick of it. And I think a weakened Brewers team will be in the mix for a while. Whether or not they can compete for the whole season, I don't know. It will not be the Pirates, and it will not be the St. Louis Cardinals, because they're, again, hot garbage.
The Cardinals have done nothing but subtract. The Brewers, to me, they're not going to win 93 games again. I don't know that they win 90. They might win like 85, 86. I think that the Cubs are somewhere between 88 and 90. And I think that the Reds have the widest range of outcomes of anybody in the top part of the division. The Reds could just as easily win 82 games as they could win 92 games. I think they're more than likely around 85, 86. And then you've got the Pirates. I don't know what to expect from them. I don't think they're last. I think that the Cardinals are last. But the reason that people are so bullish on the Cubs is because they made that Kyle Tucker trade. And they're still, although I don't think this is where he ends up, they are still rumored to be in on Alex Bregman. I think ultimately Alex Bregman is a Detroit Tiger. But I think that there's something about the Cubs' mystique and all this other stuff. Their thing is they got good starting pitching and they have a pretty solid lineup now. Their bullpen is suspect, and I don't know what to expect from it. And they have done the Nick Krall special in that they had areas of need, and they decided to address that with veteran minimum deals. So I don't necessarily know that the Cubs are just exponentially better than a lot of people are thinking, but I think of the teams in the Central, they got the most better. And I think that they're probably the team that ends up first in the division, but the Reds definitely have a shot to unseat them. And the Brewers aren't that far off either.
So, like I said, 3-horse race with Pirates and the Cardinals on the outside looking in. Let's go here. I really hope Tito has these guys ready to play every game. They played up against some great teams last year, only to lose to lesser teams right after. Consistency. That's what we heard from right out of the first press conference, right? That's what the Reds lacked. I put myself on that list of people that could not have been more frustrated that this team went out and played like they did against the Braves and the Phillies and the Dodgers, and then played like they did against the Pirates and the other lesser knowns, the Marlins, et cetera, so on and so forth. They have to be consistent. They have to play the game the right way. These are all the things that Tito is saying. Do I think Tito is going to get consistency out of them? 100%. I have no question in my mind that they will be consistent and that there will not be these giant peaks and valleys that there were in 2024.
No, I agree. And I think that we can all derive this from the consistent thing that we heard David Bell say, as opposed to one of the first things that Terry Francona said. David Bell constantly said, we're going to go out there and we're going to compete. And we're going to go out there and we're going to compete. And, we're going to play really hard and we're going to compete. That's what we always heard from him. Terry Francona in his opening press conference said, we're going to go out there and we're going to beat somebody's ass. And I love that. And I think that that's why I have a lot more faith in Terry Francona. That and the body of work in general, he's done really well with the Red Sox and the Guardians. So I think that we are going to see a much more prepared team. They're going to come out the gates hotter. They're going to remain more consistent throughout the season. They're not going to be that whole just, whoever's against them, that's what you can expect them to play like. I think that we will see them be much more reliable on the scoreboard this season.
All right, Jeff, let's try and get a couple more in here. This is off topic, but we haven't talked about this, and let's go into this for a second. Shohei's interpreter got prison time. I'm not surprised by that. I would love it if there was more of a conspiracy behind this whole deal, but I think probably not. I think Shohei was trying to be a friend to his guy and then got told very quickly, shut your mouth, dude. This is going to be bad. And that's why there was kind of a change in tune. Not a Shohei was doing anything wrong. kind of thing. By the way, he just bought a house on the Big Island, guys. If I get a Shohei sighting, I'm going live. That's what's gonna happen.
I'd be surprised if you did. No, I think that I'm not in the camp. I get it. We love to vilify stars in this day and age, but I think that Shohei was innocent of all this. I'm not gonna be amongst the throng that is trying to jump in and say Shohei knew what was going on. I don't buy that.
Let's end with I'm not gonna end with that one, but we're gonna do it. Listen, the only way
It was therapeutic.
I could have been happier with the Super Bowl than I was if the Bengals had been in it and won it. That is the only way I could have been happier than watching the Kansas City Chiefs get absolutely boat raced. That made my whole day.
That's why I love there at the end. I loved the touchdowns that they were scoring there at the end because it's just like, yeah, none of them matter. You can keep on doing it. Even Philly's just like, you want to throw it deep to Worthy there? That's fine. Whatever.
They had already dumped the Gatorade at that point. Like, they had already
like 2.5
dumped
minutes
the Gatorade.
left
Like,
in the game.
nobody cared. They just absolutely boat raced. I love it, Jeff.
Yeah, that was a very therapeutic Super Bowl.
All right, let's try and find a couple more baseball ones before we get out of here. Is there a trade you want the Reds to go make still yet?
I think mine was taken off the board whenever Brent Rooker signed his long-term deal. I kind of like the idea of, but it's not like a dream trade. I don't know that there is a dream trade, to be honest with you. I think that there's some interesting ones out there. Luis Robert is not a dream trade. I think it would be very intriguing and it would make the Reds better, but I don't know that I'm just like in love with it. And I know why he's saying that because, I mean, this is the anniversary of the dream trade of Ken Griffey Jr. coming to Cincinnati. I just don't think that there's, I mean, Shohei Ohtani, but that's not going to happen. No.
Right, and I mean, like,
not to have an
there's guys I'd love to have.
No.
I would love to have Shohei. I would love to have Aaron Judge. I mean, like, but not
right.
That's just all whimsical. And then if you're doing that, like, we're gonna get Shohei. Well, yeah, we're gonna trade. We're trading Shohei for Jamer Candelario straight up. That's the deal. Like, I mean, we're talking dreams, right? Like, that's the dream,
right?
Like, and the Dodgers will throw in a starting pitcher. They'll throw in Mookie Betts just to get it done. Like,
right. Yeah, I think there's definitely some players out there that'll be a lot of fun to see the Reds go get. As we were looking through some of the, unconfirmed things that we had heard that the Reds were looking into this offseason, there was one that I found intriguing, that they had contacted the Tigers on their third baseman, Jace Jung, who he got a taste of Major League action last year. If you look up his Major League stats, I mean, he was up for a minute and he didn't really do much. So you're not going to be intrigued by that, but he was a very highly ranked prospect for the Tigers. But there's a lot of talk that the Tigers, and I believe that the Tigers will sign Alex Bregman. So would Jace Jung be available? I'm not sure, but he would be a very interesting guy for the Reds to go get because he would fit the profile of, lots of team control, not expensive, that type of a guy, and you could plug him in at third base and feel really good about it. I would like to see that happen. I don't know what it would take to get it done, though, because, again, he has basically the entirety of his years of team control left. And the Tigers, while they are a bigger market than Cincinnati, still operate in the idea of draft and develop from within. So I think it would be harder to pry a guy like that away from them, but I'd love to see it happen.
All right, let's do one more and we'll hit the hour mark here. How many players hit over 20 home runs this season? Let's do this. 20 or more home runs in 2025, Jeff.
20 or more. So if you hit 20 it counts.
You hit 20, you're in the club. You're in the 20 homer club. Obviously, I think Ellie De La Cruz is there. He led the team in homers last year at 25. Spencer Steer hit 20 last year. I think he hits more. Jamer Candelario hit 20 last year. I think he hits more. Tyler Stevenson just missed it. He hit 19 last year. I think he hits more. So that's 4 guys right there through Stevenson. Does Matt McClain get you 20 home runs?
Yeah.
That's 5. We said CES is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 25. So
See, and we did this last year too. Like
it.
when we looked at this lineup, we said there's so much talent that they could do this. And I stand by that. I agree with you. I think we could be talking about like 6 guys, if healthy, get to that 20
Well, and
homers.
I think that Jake Fraley could hit 20 home runs. Also, that would be your 7th guy in the lineup that could hit 20 home runs.
I don't know that I would bet on it. I think I would stay away from that because there's, I think, more than likely
over under 5.5 number of players in the Reds lineup with 20 home runs, right? I just gave you 6. Would you take the over there if I set it at 5.5?
5.5.
I would take the over.
I think so. And the wild card for me is not Jake Fraley. The wild card is TJ Friedl. Could TJ Friedl hit 20? His whole thing is he hasn't stayed healthy enough to play an entire season. But if he played an entire season, could he hit 20? I think he could.
If Stevenson hits 40, it counts twice. Yes, it does. Oh, I'm never going to live that down. You know, I get excited one time, Jeff. I get excited one time, and it's going to be like the thing forever.
No, we're getting so close there. I mean, he's at what's it, 32? 32 for the last 2 years.
I don't know if you recall, I did do that tracker on Twitter last season. Every time you get a home run, 32 to go, baby. Cooking with gasoline now.
Cooking with gas.
And Carrick makes a good point. He said he takes the under. Unlikely everyone stays healthy. That's true.
Yeah, that's the tough part.
That's the hard part. But I think it's a great question, and that is where we are going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. Thanks as always for joining us here when we're live on YouTube. And if you can't be here live, make sure you watch the replays, click the subscribe and notification bells so you know when we go live or when we post an episode. And if you can't be on your computer or watching YouTube, you can always get us in the audio feeds. We're everywhere. So make sure you follow us there. And with that, Jeff, get us out of here.
Thanks, everybody, for checking this out. This is going to be something, and it won't start next week. It'll be here in a couple of weeks. We're going to try to make this like a thing, like Monday afternoon lives. Recapping the weekend and looking up the next series, getting you ready for the next series. So get ready for that. That's coming for you Mondays at 2 p.m. here on the Locked On Reds YouTube page. We'll get you set for some live shows coming up here soon. But until then, you can trust we are going to be all over the Reds news, the Reds rumors, health statuses, best shapes of their lives reports, and all that stuff is coming for you on the next Locked On Reds podcast because spring training has sprung and baseball's on its way. And until then, we will be Locked On Reds every single day. Holy crap, that rhymed. I hit that. I nailed that.
First time for everything. Even a broke clock is right twice a day.